This is Big Ideas Welcome, Season 3. We're pairing business legends with ambitious founders to dive deep into the world of big ideas, successes, failures, and lessons learned. I'm Chris McAdoo, and this episode is all about making space and finding place. I'm joined by two incredible guests, Randy Boyd and Jaleria Rivera. Randy Boyd is the president of the University of Tennessee College System, the founder of radio systems, think PetSafe, Invisible Fence. He's formerly the commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. He's also a bit of a sports guy. He's leading the charge on the new Knoxville, Tennessee downtown multi-use stadium, home of the Knoxville Smokies, One Knox Soccer, and so much more. Jaleria Rivera is an artist, an activist, the founder of Spacecraft Knoxville. It's a creative incubator that describes itself as a constellation of artists, misfits, and dreamers. This episode is about how people like Randy and Jaleria shape the places they're in and how those places they build with intention shape the communities that they care about from the ground up. Let's get to work. Hello, everyone. This is Chris McAdoo. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for an organization called the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. It's a business accelerator located right in the heart of downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, dedicated to changing lives through entrepreneurship. And today, we've got a big conversation. It is an important conversation, and it's one I think that everyone needs to have. Our theme is making space and finding place. Like, how do we foster community, creativity, innovation through placemaking? And how do we empower the people around us to do the same? I'm joined by Jaleria Rivera, the founder of Spacecraft. It's okay, you guys can even clap. We have an audience here.
I know, it's like we pretend.
And the founder of Spacecraft, and Randy Boyd. Randy, everybody, come on. Thank you. You will have already heard in the intro many things about Randy as president of the University of Tennessee Network, as well as so many other things. But what Randy and Jaleria have in common the most, and the thing that was really interesting to me about this conversation, is that you both want to affect community at scale. Randy, you've been able to do this for a long time and make so much difference in so many people's lives. And Jaleria, you are beginning that journey. And I think there's more in common than you would think, and that's what we're about to find out. So I'm going to start with, we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy of Senator Howard Baker and the Baker School. Randy, you wrote in an article recently that our democracy flourishes not because we always agree, but because we commit to engaging in ways that honor each other's voices and perspectives. So you do so much work in rural Tennessee as well as other places. Jaleria, same thing, taking care of people. Again, Randy, you said Tennesseans take care of each other. So I've got a question from Marianne Wanamaker. She's the professor of economics and dean of the Baker School of Public Policy and Public Affairs. And she asks a great question. If you're an entrepreneur, if you are an innovator, if you are a leader, how do you get involved? How do you learn more about the civic affairs in your local community? And I'm going to flip the script a little bit here, and I'm going to ask Jaleria first, because you came from the University of Chattanooga, moved up here in COVID, and so you've had to navigate a very interesting world. So how have you, as a person that's looking for that forward motion, gotten involved in the civic life of this community?
Yeah, I feel like for me, on average, it takes anybody whenever they move to a new city to take 2 years to get acclimated, to get cozy. And for me, I had to do it the old school way of reaching out to people, calling, DMing, going to their email, being like, hey, I just love your artwork, or I love your business. Like, would you be open to having a cup of coffee and just having a dreaming session on what do you appreciate about your city? What do you want to see? And through those one-on-one conversations, that's how I was able to meet incredible artists like my dear friends like Kelsey and Wesley, where we're actually like dreaming together and building through vessels like Spacecraft or even other organizations. But for me, it started just straight up talking to people and just asking curious questions just to get to know each other.
Well, as a man who sort of made, this is funny, I know right before we started, Randy reminded us all, always be closing. And so for a man who built a career around selling invisible fence, what's something that you would tell someone in that same spirit of, I love that you made those phone calls?
Yes, as I think about our ability now to give back, and people ask, well, why do you give back to the community? It's because everything that Jenny and I, my wife, and I have is because of the people that have given so much to us, and it came from this community. We started off with our public schools. We both grew up in public schools here in Knox County, and we had so many great teachers and mentors there. When I started my business, there were so many people that reached out to help, and we had such a great network of board members, of other external mentors, that everything that we've been able to do was because of the help that we got from the community. So when you mentioned about I guess our engagement has been kind of bifurcated. There was a point in which I think we're benefiting, taking more from the community. The community was giving to us, but then there was a point where that transition, when we were in a position to be able to give back. And we like to say that if we give back the rest of our life, we'll still die in debt. We can never pay back all that we've been given.
Well, talk a little bit about, I think so much of our formative experiences, Randy, when you were 23 years old, you have sort of started this company. You've taken your life savings to essentially reverse it.
Which wasn't that much, by the way, at that time. It's not really quite as big a deal as it might sound. When you're 23 years old, you might have a couple of $1,000s in the bank. So
right.
Not that big a deal.
Well, when you are 23, and at that point, you did, whatever, if it's $2, 2,000 or 20, you put that into building what would become PetSafe brands, what would become this big thing. But at that time, you were newly married, you had a 2-year-old, right? And you were traveling the country working. You were making these connections. Let's kind of go into that. Like, what were some of the things that you looked for, and the things that, from a mentorship angle, right? So, but Jaleria, you're kind of talking about who's doing what, and who's doing it well, and what are some of the things that you looked for in those formative years of people you knew, that's someone I want to learn from.
I'll give you an example. One of my best mentors from a CEO point of view, teaching me what it's like what a great CEO should do, was Don Johnstone. So I guess I'm maybe 33 years old. We decided to put together a board that would help us go public. We decided not to go public, which was the good thing to do. But we put the board together to have people that could look good in a public offering. But it turned out the more valuable part is just the advice they were able to give. But there's this one gentleman, Don Johnstone. He was the CEO of North American Philips. He had taken them from $800 million. They Magnavox televisions. Took them from $800 million and losing money to $2 billion and making money. If you remember the tagline, "Smart, very smart," that Magnavox, he created that. But he was a brilliant person. Formerly worked for Jack Welch. He directly reported to Jack Welch at GE prior to taking that job. And to get him on my board and to provide advice was one of the most valuable things I ever did. And you sometimes wonder how do you get somebody like that on your board? I offered him stock options. We didn't have the money to give him actual cash, so I offered him stock options. And he told me afterwards, and he was probably right, that he really didn't believe that stock options would ever be worth anything. He wasn't even sure if the company would make it. But I asked him, well, why did you take the time to invest in us? And at some point, he said, I just believed in you. He believed in me. And I think now when I'm trying to pay back, and I have a young person come to me, and a lot of times I'm not quite sure of the business idea, but if I believe in their passion and their commitment, and then I'll bet on them and try to do everything that I can for them, the same way that Don did for me.
Wow. Well, Jaleria, a little bit of the same, as you've built this spacecraft community. And I love, so the way that it's described, Spacecraft is a constellation of artists, misfits, and creatives spreading joy through joy activism, community care, and playful practice. And tell me a little bit about the people around you that have helped shape your trajectory, and kind of probably some of those same questions. How do we do this? How do we afford this? how do we build this, right? Tell me about some of those folks that have come along and maybe some of those things that maybe you wouldn't have expected them to open themselves up to do.
Well, my story definitely mirrors the connection you have with your mentor, but I didn't really have a single person yet. I'm manifesting this, a mentor. But it definitely is like my peer group is so strong. And it really started with just like those one-to-one conversations, and then it grew into friendships, and then it grew into us being like in activism together and us dreaming up opportunities that were just outside the bounds of just like the traditional norms or business as usual that we were operating in. And a lot of the work that we do, it's rooted in like Afrofuturism, Appalachian futurism, and all of us really having a deep interest in the longevity of like the work that we do here. So with Spacecraft, like after all those peer relationships grew, I participated in What's the Big Idea, and that really was just like an accelerator. You have 48 hours, let's put like pen to paper, let's do it, let's figure this out. And all I had at that time was a dream. And I'm very much a visionary, I'm very much a dreamer. So for me just to communicate the dream and then have people around me who are great at the actual processes and operations was tremendous. And not winning the competition didn't matter because every single person, we had a team of 12, ended up being our board for the first year when we were actually like going to launch Spacecraft. And after that, that led to us getting a space. And I only knew about the space because I already had a growing relationship with friends who knew someone else and knew the owner. So like everything that's manifested within Spacecraft is because of like that social capital that we built over the last like 4 years. So I definitely feel connected to what you're saying of when you believe in people, when people believe in you, that's like the most magical gift you can ever have when starting a business.
And I think, where is that magical sort of thing where you mix a visionary's, like, here's where we're going, with an operator's mindset? And that visionary is paired with, what did we actually have to do next, right? What are the actual next steps that we're going to take? Who are the people that we need to bring in? I think about Donde Plowman. I think I'm misquoting her, but she says something like dramatic collaboration.
Radical collaboration.
Radical collaboration, right? I love that idea of bringing that. So in that sense, now I kind of go back to Randy, along the way, right? As a as a business person, as a community leader, as you were leading the Tennessee Department of Economic Development, what are some things that have surprised you that maybe you thought, okay, I want to move this in this direction, but I've got smart, amazing people around me that I'm learning from. And so maybe we're going to take this in a way that's surprising and interesting that I could have never expected.
Well, I'm not sure exactly the question, but I would say that in every initiative, we usually look for ways to do something revolutionary and break the mold. And so you surround yourself with people that share that vision. I tend to be more the always be closing guy, the guy that's trying to sell the idea. But as was shared, you also want to surround yourself with people that can execute different things. I'm lousy at accounting. First thing I'll do, I'll make sure I get an accounting, somebody that can manage that side of the house, and then the engineering side. So one of the things I think every entrepreneur learns is that they've got to surround themselves with the talents that they don't have. And over time, the more successful you are, you basically have somebody that can do all the really creative and key features, and your job is just to make sure you bring the team together and coordinate them and keep them aligned.
Well, and I'll dig a little further because I know that probably no one in the state knows more than this. The GDP for the state of Tennessee, right? It's a little over $500 billion per year, 523 some odd billion. The creative arts, as well as the creative arts are about 4.2% of that in Tennessee. So, and you may know you'll know the statistic for small business and community-driven enterprise. And so, to those entrepreneurs that are coming up, that may feel like that idea or what they are trying to do may or may not have a place, what would you tell them about the impact they can have? Kind of keeping that in mind. Sometimes it's very surprising when you think about $523 billion, right, from our state.
So I'll even though I was the former commissioner of economic and community development, at this moment in time, I couldn't have told you what the GDP of the state is. I would have probably had to Google it. So the fact is, when I was starting my invisible fence business or those things didn't matter.
Yeah.
You're kind of focused on your world and making your sales that day. So you don't spend a lot of time thinking about your place in the overall economy. You're just trying to make the next sell, get to the next day. Those things, start worrying about those things maybe much later in life, but early on it's about survival and getting to the next day and just making sure that you're providing value.
Well, what are some of the things, back to you, Jaleria, about that providing value? I think a lot of times, I'm guilty of it. I just did it. I was like, here's a big number that sounds fancy, right? But all too often we lose sight of the people that we are serving. And sometimes it's those that are right next door, right down the street, the people that should matter the most to us. What are some of the decisions that you have made while building Spacecraft that you feel has put you in a position to make those small changes that will lead to success on a larger scale eventually?
Yeah. So Spacecraft is a cooperative. So it practices like circular economics. So how can we have a diverse amount of voices contribute to like the shared governance of the space? And what's wonderful about this is that in 6 months since we've opened, the amount of adaptability we've been able to have so quickly has been instrumental into how we've been able to grow to where we are today. And I feel like allowing, like you mentioned, Randy, being like a good leader is being able to bring people together and honestly give people a confidence to share their voice of like, hey, I'm really strong at like putting on a production for a theater. Like, can you trust me to go ahead and put on this show? And like that show contributing to it being sold out and that artist having an opportunity to like fulfill like an internal creativity that they didn't have like a stage to do so is really powerful. And I feel like Spacecraft is growing so well because we have that adaptability and honestly that shared trust in everyone to contribute to our circular economy.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelsey Walker. I'm the Communications Director for the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. Since 2013, KAC has been the center of gravity without being the center of attention in our entrepreneurial ecosystem, helping build a collaborative and supportive environment where entrepreneurs of all kinds can thrive. We believe in changing lives through entrepreneurship, and we want you to be a part of that adventure. Visit knoxec.com to connect with the official KAC Mentor Network and learn about the extensive programming that we have going on all year long. You can also sign up for our newsletter and connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. 12 years, thousands of events, classes and workshops, thousands of entrepreneurs, thousands of connections, and we're just getting started.
Well, and I know you guys, you and Jenny, your wonderful fiddle playing wife, are so involved in the arts. I know you guys have, Randy, you're a big fan of the River and Rail Theater. Mm-hmm. So what has it meant? Actually, this is a really cool sort of question. When you came back to Knoxville, or when you came back from Nashville and you're spending a lot more time here, what has it meant over the last decade or so to see this, I would say, creative growth in this town, this downtown that, a lot of mid-level cities across the South faced the same pains in the 90s. That train that you hear in the background that used to carry goods and services, they left. And a lot of downtowns emptied out, and people have dealt with that differently, but Knoxville in particular has had such a resurgence over the last 20, but especially the last 10 and 5. What's it meant to you and your family to be a part of it, but then to also see it grow so well?
Let me say a couple of things. First, I want to make sure, for the record, we state that it's Jenny that loves the arts and is the one that has all the artistic talent. I'm just her loving supporter, and so I don't make sure I don't take any credit for any talent whatsoever. But she's passionate about the arts. I'm passionate about her, and thus I'm also passionate about the arts. My son, Harrison, is also one of the big supporters of River and Rail. He's on the board, and so I give him credit for the support of River and Rail. And I believe all these things help make for a community that attracts talent. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I learned when I was Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, I remember I took the job, and I'm thinking, this is a really long title, Commissioner of Economic and Community. Why don't we just say Commissioner of Jobs? Because that's really what it's about, right? It's just about jobs. But I learned really quickly that there's no place in the country where there's a large, talented pool of unemployed people. If you get talent is employed. So if you're trying to recruit a business to a location, it's not about recruiting them to some place where there's a bunch of talent. You've got to recruit them to a place where talent wants to come. And so that's why the community part of community and economic development is so important. For us to be successful as a state, as a community, we have to invest in the community. You have to create the some people call it civic furniture, but create the things that make your community a place where people want to live. You can, in today's world, you can work anywhere. So you want to work where you want to live. So if we want to create a dynamic economy and future for our community, we need to invest in these type of things, the arts, and I would also suggest maybe even a baseball stadium, but things that make it a more livable community.
Well, and I think it is, April 15th, 2025.
Always be closing. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. April 15th, tickets are still available.
Well, and that is change at such dramatic scale that we're excited to see a lot. We're excited to see that, and we're excited to see what comes next. Now, kind of, Jaleria, from your standpoint, talk about that sort of civic furniture. I love what you just said about people want to work where they want to live. They want to come. They build things that attract people to be there, right? And so for you in the spacecraft community and the young folks that, again, coming from Chattanooga and then, coming from Atlanta to Chattanooga and now making Knoxville your home, what are you guys looking for? What helps a young educated workforce be attracted to an area like Knoxville?
Because it's really interesting because I'm kind of like the case study of I work remotely, right, with like an internet company, and I spend most of my time like coming to downtown, experiencing like the arts community, either going to restaurants, hanging out with friends, and to be honest, like if COVID didn't happen, I probably would have left Knoxville. Because I felt I felt as though there was something missing, like the energy that you experience in Brooklyn or the energy that I experienced when I was in Atlanta. And when I was like, you know what, Jaleria, pause. Let's not leave. You can't just uproot and try again every other place. I was like, how can I build something here? And what I was missing was the grassroots, the underground. Where are the people who are from here creating and building? Where do the artists hang out? Like where's that almost, to give like a metaphor, where's that Parisian cafe where James Baldwin where were they talking, right? And that's what I wanted to build. So for me, I'm staying now because I'm now more ingrained in the grassroots art community. Like we have a huge like swing dance community here that people are just doing this out of the love of dance. They're not making profit from it, but every single class is packed. And they're bringing profit to all of these different businesses like the Sutries, or Laurel Theater. And I feel like there is like a missed opportunity to really invest in the grassroots communities who are uplifting and building the unique culture that is Knoxville. I learned like a year or so ago that like we gotta stop trying to be like Brooklyn and when you start being Knoxville. And being Knoxville starts with investing in the local artists here who are building. That way, when anyone comes in, they're like, whoa, Knoxville's different. What's Knoxville on? Like, I'm loving this Knoxville energy. And like, that's the cool thing about when you meet people who are from California, we meet people who come here from Chicago, and they're like, actually, I don't wanna go. Like, that place is oversaturated. I can build my career here. And that's what I've been seeing now that I'm building Spacecraft and it being a launch pad for a lot of people's artistry is, wow, we really can just build and dream in like our own way. And with maker, like the same ideology of like the maker city is like, how do we make a living for those people who are doing this work as well?
I'm going to pile on to that because I think I haven't spent much time in Brooklyn, and I'm going to pick on another city, so I'm not going to say names of other cities, but I will say that I think the thing that's great about Knoxville is that we have all this exciting growth, but we also have kept our authenticity. It still feels like an authentic community where some other places seem very superficial, and so I'm really proud of that, and I hope we can continue to keep that.
No, what a great thing, and I like, Julia, I think there's a certain southernness about apologizing from somewhere that you're not. For a long time, I think in Knoxville took that like, well, we're not X or Y or Z, but now we have so many opportunities to say, I love how you said it, like, no, we're not like this other place. We set that standard for culture, for business, for entrepreneurship, for innovation, and for employment, right? To be a place that people want to come to. Oh man, good. Well, so, and you said something very important there too, Jaleria, about you saw that something was missing, so you did something about it. So back to you, Ray, you've probably seen, I would venture to say you get a lot of complaints from a lot of people, right? From
Part of the job, and all the jobs.
It's part of every job, and anyone that is going to be doing something is going to receive that.
I wouldn't say complaints, it's suggestions about how to do things better.
Right.
So that's the way I take them.
Well, that's a great way to think about it. And of those, of the people that come and say, we should do this or you should do this, I always think about the, from the KEC, from the entrepreneur standpoint, I look for people that are willing to pick up a shovel. I look for people that are willing to raise their hand. What has it meant to you to be doing so much at such a high level over the years where someone says, hey, Randy, I think we should be doing this. Also, here's the plan for it. Also, here, I've got a network. You know, someone that comes to you not only with a problem, but with a solution. What does that mean for you? And I'll do two things as a business person and as a community leader.
No, always exciting to see somebody that has not just an. There's, I guess maybe I'm not going to say there's two types of people. There are at least two types of people. Some that just like to complain about things and wish they were better, and then people that also have an idea and want to try to make a difference, like Jaleria and her ideas. And it's always so exciting and refreshing when you have somebody that has an idea and has a plan, and those are the type of people you want to get behind and help support and help them grow. And Knoxville has a lot of those. There's a lot of big ideas in this community and a lot of exciting things on our horizon.
Well, and to sort of, to sort of put a bow on things here in the next few minutes, because I hope that kind of getting to know each other and getting to know where we came from as well as where we're going has been beneficial for you all as well as for our audience. Now, our audience for the KC, you know, thousands and thousands of people, we're doers, we're operators, unapologetic operators. And I do have, although if you're listening on the podcast, you won't see it, but I brought a photo here of.
We first opened up.
There we go. I'm trying to show it here. I'm going to show it over there for the folks, and we'll pop it here. But Jaleria, what we have here is the ribbon cutting at the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, which is also, I believe it was April 5th, 2013. Randy's here. You see a lot of faces: Charlie Brock, Jim Clayton. Ferris, a lot of folks that have been at this for a long time, right? So how do you manage to be both a constant operator, right? Like, so when you start a business, you may think things are going to operate on a certain schedule. But like Mike Tyson tells us, everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face. So how have you maintained that visionary aggression of being able to build and push through while also being patient? Because that was 12 years ago. And now we're here, and now we're building the stadium, and now we're doing these things. And how do you sort of impart that to people you work with, or what would you tell those entrepreneurs that may want something to happen tomorrow, but it may happen, 2 years from now, or 3 or 4?
I would tell them not to lose their impatience. It's always good to be impatient. Always good. So your question almost implies that I've learned patience, and that's not really true. But you do, through experience, realize that certain things do take time. Like building a stadium, you can't do it in 6 months. It's going to take 2.5 years. Yeah. And by the way, we're almost 2 months ahead of schedule, which is really exciting. Wow. But I think over the years, you're constantly coming up with new big ideas. It makes life exciting. So we're now working at the University of Tennessee for the last 6 years. I only signed up for 6 months. I thought I'll be here for 6 months. I'll get a lot of big things done, and then I'll move on. But there's always more big things on the horizon. We have more big things planned at UT now than we did 6 years ago. And so there's always something exciting to keep you motivated and finding ways to make a difference.
Yeah. So you always want to push to that next thing. UT, you're going to 71,000.
We got to build the buildings to do that, which is my project right now.
Okay.
Trying to make sure that we get enough investment from the state to help us do that.
To actually make that happen.
Exactly.
Because it takes those partnerships. And Jaleria, same deal. I kind of want to know some of the things that you see for the future. We've talked about you and where your people are coming from, that coming into Spacecraft, what you've been able to build. What do you see both for yourself and your community and for Spacecraft and for Knoxville? Let's say, what do we look like in 24 months?
Are we dreaming?
Yeah. If we're gonna be
That's up my alley.
impatient, because I love it. If we're gonna be impatient, what should we be impatient to see and experience?
I love this question so much because I'm very impatient too, and I think that's also why I have such wonderful friends to keep me grounded in dreaming. But what I see for Knoxville, for Spacecraft, for our grassroots community, is how can we create a community, a creative economy that allows for grassroots artists and native locals to truly flourish. Like, how can we create a mobilization strategy where a touring musician can go from Knoxville to Atlanta to Nashville and like make a living to start out? You know, how can we build, like even within our cooperative, there's like 5 different grassroots organizations. How can we make it so Spacecraft's an incubator, a platform for they can get their own studio, their own building, their own theater one day? And for all of that to be homegrown would be so powerful for Knoxville. And like, I think for me, Spacecraft is that dream. Spacecraft can be a creative reuse center. It can be that incubator for artists. It can be that like starting stage. And for me, I want Knoxville to be so exciting where I can be a guest. Like, I can't wait to walk into spaces I've never heard of before and be like, wow, I would have never thought to bring that here. Or like, man, I think for me, that's what Knoxville is about. And I know for me, I'm always thinking, and like even when in connection with like the Waymakers Collective, they're like this Afrofuturism group, and they talk a lot about like how can we like radically change like philanthropy, and how do we give back, and how do we allow people who are in these grassroots communities to govern their own resources and to grow. And for me, that starts with just like imagining that and creating platforms for people and allowing them to like have full autonomy and governance of how they do their work and trust them to do their work well. Rather than bringing in talent, like let's just really focus on the people here who are so good, especially artists. We have some phenomenal artists here that just need a chance, that just need a stage, that just needs like a few thousand to make their album, you know? And like, if we can give them that, and then to say like, what if we made the next Dolly of this generation? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to think about. And if I can say Spacecraft was a seed within their story, whew, I won. That's the dream for me.
That's great.
Same to you. Where are we in 24 months, 18 months? Where would you like to see this area, the 865? Where are we headed? Where are we headed, and where would you like to see us? And I think Jaleria's kind of set the bar high.
Yeah, so next time I do this, I always want to answer the question first. I don't want to ever follow Jaleria. But so I support everything that she's hoping to do, and I want to find ways in which I can help support what you're trying to do. But so we do need to have that strong artistic community to help make our community as all that it can be. But I'll just say, just from a pure numbers and economics point of view, the University of Tennessee is going to continue to grow, which is going to continue to drive the overall growth of the community. You'll see over $1 billion worth of new construction going on the campus, committed to probably in the next 2 to 3 years, which is going to drive lots of opportunity. At the stadium, we've got so many projects that I'm told that will be coming out of the ground that I'm not necessarily involved in, but I'm aware of. But the investment at the stadium, all the parts, is around $350 million. I know of about close to $500 million more that will be invested in or committed to in the next 2 years. So we're going to see a lot of dramatic growth in this area. Lots of more, people coming to the area, lots of new jobs, lots of new businesses. And I'm hopeful that in that we will have that artistic community growing in parallel with it.
Thanks to our friends at K-Brew for making this podcast and so many things possible. And thanks to Pierce, the founder, for bringing us the K-Brew Roast. Pierce, what is today's K-Brew Roast?
I think today's K-Brew Roast is the myth that you have to keep up with anybody else in business. This can look like my buddy reads a book a week, so I've got to read a book a week. It can look like this tech company is scaling at 37 times a year, and I run a more traditional business, and we're not going to do that. You're on your own journey. You're on your own mission. sometimes, a lot of times, less is more.
Where do the people go to dig into the K-Brew magic and maybe get a little special offer for our Big Ideas Welcome audience?
Absolutely. Download the K-Brew app, K-Brew Coffee and Bagels, and you will get a free coffee or tea on your first visit or your next visit if you already go to K-Brew.
Well, I think, Jaleria, you were talking about from the ground up, right? And I believe that in entrepreneurship as well. I love it when instead of fixing someone dinner, you teach them how to cook. Mm-hmm. And as you've seen, Randy, over your life, both from a leadership within the either in the leadership space, entrepreneurship, or community, what happens when you let people, when you help people feel empowered to make their own decisions, to grow their own, right? So we'll wrap everything up here with the easiest question all day, and again, from the perspective of one of the quotes that sort of helped me think about this making space, finding place theme that we've talked about today was a quote that I hear a lot, and it is, "Greatness is in the agency of others." And I think both of you have over and over again said you'd love to be a part of something. You'd love, even if you're a spark that ignites energy, that ignites over 150,000 people being able to go to college through Tennessee Promise. Even if you're the spark that makes that thing that you don't even know is coming, right? So to all those people out there, if they're artists, entrepreneurs, business people, wherever they are, and they think what's next? What's the biggest piece of advice about two things? One, why do you care in the first place, and what do you do about it? What do you tell people? Like, what do you focus on, and then what do you do next? I'll start with Randy, the first.
For the entrepreneurs, they should make sure they're listening to their customers always and engage in the community, engage with whomever it is that they're trying to serve, and make sure they understand. Every mistake I made is when I thought I had a really brilliant idea and took it to market, and it always failed. Every time the customers told me what they wanted and I listened carefully and did exactly what they said, I was successful. Yeah. So that was, I guess, one bit of advice I would share. And then the second thing is just to get out and try. I heard somebody introduce me the other day as a natural born leader, and I had to immediately get up when I said nothing could be more false. Leading is something that you develop over time through a series of failures, and you just keep getting better and better through the mistakes you make. And so I would encourage anybody starting off just to not be afraid to fail. Get there and try. My first business failed within 6 months. My next business was mediocre. Did manage but it was a platform that led me to the third business. And the third business, within 5 years, looked like we were going to go out of business within months. We were months away from total bankruptcy, but we managed to turn it around. So don't be afraid to fail and get out there and try early. And here's something too I can share with I actually do this at a commencement. I'll share at commencements that I'm going to give you some advice that probably no other commencement speaker is going to give you. That is to go forth and fail. And there's three things about failure. One, you're going to learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. So it's great lessons. Two, when you're young and you fail, you really don't have that far to fall. So you're not, really, like we talked about at the start, if you lose everything, well, you didn't really have that much. So it's not that big a deal. But the third thing, and most important, if you learn these mistakes or these lessons early, then you got the rest of your life. I'm 65. If I learn a lesson now, maybe I got 20 more years to take advantage of it. But Jaleria will have another 70 or 80 years to take advantage of it. So get out there early, fail, learn, and keep building.
What about you, Jaleria?
That was so good.
Well, now you get the...
I was like, snaps. Can we repeat the question one more time? I
ask long questions.
Here's the trick I've also learned. Just answer the question that you wish he asked. Yeah. Don't worry about the question.
I think he just...
Advice.
He's a pro. Yes, he is a pro.
It is interesting to offer advice because I'm so new to this too. I started Spacecraft conceptually in 2020, really only launched 6 months ago. So we're so young. So I guess for me, my greatest advice, I'll give it from the perspective of an artist since I've been doing that longer, is know the history of your craft, know the history of where you are, and figure out that 1%, 3% modification and just play. One of the greatest gifts that I've learned within dance is like improvisation. You are on the fly, just take in, listen to the music, and just allow yourself to move through it and be that vessel for whatever you feel called to do in that moment. And if you're always in that state of play, then like Randy mentioned, like you'll be fine. Like failure is gonna happen regardless. You're gonna make a lot of crappy art, but you have to make crap art in order to get to the thing that you are known for, in order to find your style. So I feel like that's my greatest advice I can offer, and I feel like that translates even into entrepreneurship, because with Spacecraft, it's improvisation. We're figuring it out. We're having to listen to artists. With every like open session and artist playground we host, I'm always asking like, hey, how are y'all feeling about these sessions? Is there anything you want to see? Are there workshops? Like what learning capabilities should we like look into? And that's how we're always consistently adapting to.
That's amazing. And Jaleria, where can people go to learn more about Spacecraft?
Yeah, you can go online, spacecraftknox.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, at Spacecraft Knox. Sign up to our weekly newsletter.
Awesome. And Randy, like we've mentioned, that first pitch is getting thrown out April 15th.
That's right.
2025. So if you are a baseball fan or if you're a soccer fan with 100 Knox, where can people go to learn more about the stadium itself, the Smokies, and 100 Knox?
I think they just go to Knoxville Smokies and they can get information about the Smokies, and One Knox, the soccer team, also has a website. So just Google either of those and you'll be able to find everything you need to know.
Awesome. And of course, you can just Google Go Vols, and
You can find everything else about UT.
We'll find it all else out.
Can I add one thing? Because you just
Please.
asked about the soccer and the
Absolutely.
baseball, but our goal is to have about 700 events there a year. So we want to have music festivals. We're working with Live Nation to organize some concerts, but we want to make this a center for the community. So it's not just baseball and soccer. It's going to be a lot of things. We're going to have all kinds of like farmers markets and lots of other types of events. So it's the community's meeting place, and that's what we want to make it. So if we can think of some things we want to do around the arts, that we would love to be able to host those.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. That is it's a sort of a Peter Drucker style, like success and intention breeds a powerful, empowered community. So I love that. So Randy, Jaleria, I really appreciate you all coming together and having this wonderful conversation. To our audience out there, I hope that you have taken, again, so much we have in common. But I think my key takeaway here is it's worth a try. It's worth saying, why not, instead of why. And that's a big mind shift, because it means you might be wrong. And it means someone else may have a better idea. It means someone else may come along and be able to improve what you're thinking about. And you pivot from that and you learn from it. And especially for, Jaleria, and for you guys, you learn from it, and you have so long, to your point, Randy, to take advantage of your learning.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
There we go. There we go. So the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, you can learn more, of course, at knoxec.com. We're here. We want to help Knoxville grow as well, all the way from our individual Maker City entrepreneurs to 100 Knoxville, and of course our growth stage. I mean, I get to spend all day talking with incredible artists, all the way to folks doing next level carbon technology in space. So Knoxville has so much going for it, and let's keep that energy going and get after it, y'all. I'm Chris McAdoo, as always, honored to be with you. Let's get to work.